Okay everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're back on GT Sport and we're back with the FIA manufacturers round number 5 driving at St. Croix. Now this was another combination that I wasn't really fully up to speed on because I didn't really give myself much time to learn this reverse variation. I didn't even realise it was reverse until I think it was just the day it was on. I thought it was the other way round, that we've done Group 2 racing, so it was a little bit of a surprise. I went on and seen it was reverse, and I wasn't sure if I was going to race it. I decided that I was going to in the end. I managed to get my lap time and time trial down to not a very fast 302.5 I think it was, but it was okay. I could see that the potential was there to get obviously in the top 5 within the time trial leaderboard if I was going to push a little bit more, but I didn't have time to push. I had to just go straight in and just test out the tyres. Straight away I realised that the medium tyres were just the qualifying time tyre. It's something I think it's strange what they're doing with some of these combinations. They need to think about the rate of tyre wear a bit more, because they're not really leaving it open to like a different strategy. They're kind of it seems to be very much favoured towards just sticking on the hard tyre. So for the race conditions, that is. So for qualifying, I decided what I was going to do was, you can see this is my main qualifying lap, but at the moment I'm taking it fairly easy. I'm not pushing too hard, trying to leave a bit of space here in case I make an error, because what I did was I burnt my fuel on 2 laps. I pitted on the end of my first out lap, fresh set of tyres, burnt some more fuel, and then just give myself 1 flying lap on the medium tyres. Now this was kind of safer for me because I didn't really know the track 100%, so I only, with the advantage you're going to get with that low fuel and then fresh medium tyres, and obviously with the really low fuel, the medium tyres are a fair bit faster than any other combination. You know, if the hard tyres or whatever, some other people were running the hard tyres, but this combination that I was running, it was risking the fact that if I make a mistake or spin the car, that's it, I'm starting dead last on the grid. However, I kind of knew if I just take it easy, don't push too hard, you know, don't take it too close to limits. You can see going through there, not really getting close to the curb, just giving myself plenty of space on the exit. It wasn't really a question of I wasn't really going to make much of a massive error that was going to lose me too much time, so I was just trying to keep it consistent without pushing too hard, and just what I wanted to do was just try and start in the top 4 positions really, and then just go for a consistent race pace, because I felt that if I started in the top 4 or 5 positions, keep it consistent, I might pick up a top 3, you know, which I would have been really happy with, you know, going into this race, because I just didn't really know the track too well. But I have to admit, I do quite like this track in reverse. It's better than other tracks in reverse. I still prefer it the proper way round. However, it's still quite enjoyable this way. Obviously going through the fast flowing corners, it's quite a nice track. I do like the St. Croix track. I think it's really a nice track to race on. There's not many overtaking opportunities because although you've got the slipstream, a lot of the corners are really fast, and there's not really a heavy braking zone from a fast straight. It's normally fast corners like 3rd, 4th gear corners, so it's very hard track to overtake. So track position is really important, and you can see I managed to go over the line on not a particularly great, it was a 305.6 I think it was there, so not a massively fast lap, but it was good enough to start P2, and that's why I went on this strategy of obviously doing my lap at the end with low fuel with just the medium tyres, because I think if I would have practiced that I would have been able to get well into the 304s, but obviously I didn't really have time to fully get myself up to speed, so managed to start P2 and quite happy with that. You can see PRT Snake in front of me, J Adams behind me, J Adams 2010 right behind me there. So this is going to be quite an interesting race. There's quite a few reasonably fast drivers in this lobby. You can see straight away from the lights, we're going to go through to the replay camera and watch the action as we go straight into the slipstream of that Porsche in front. We've got the BMW behind us, quite a fast car, obviously the M6, so I have to be cautious of that car picking up a slipstream, but Jay Adams is quite a respectful driver. I know that he's not going to just chuck it up the inside and you know, just make a risky move. So everyone gets through turn 1, and you can see Jay Adams picking up a big slipstream there. I can see him on my left, but I can see that he's not just going to throw it up. I see him just kind of back off a bit and let me go back into the racing line, so it's good to see. I knew he'd do that, but then P4 goes for a little bit of a dive up on Jay Adams and manages to get through there past Jay Adams in the BMW and puts the Lexus into P3. So now I'm very close to P1, just trying to stay with him at this stage. Obviously in this race it was all about just trying to keep it consistent and just trying to keep it smooth. So the Porsche was fairly good at this track. Obviously the downside to this track was, for the Porsche, obviously was the fuel. Now Polyphony for this race, and whether they're trying to just nerf certain cars in different areas, made it so that you kind of had to look after the fuel and maybe put some fuel in at the pit stop. So the Porsche, isn't the best car when it comes to fuel consumption. So the Lexus behind me I was quite worried about, because that Lexus doesn't really lose any speed. As we see a car going off there, and Jay Adams getting a little bit loose coming out of that corner there, losing a bit of time again to P3. So Jay Adams struggling a little bit in that BMW, but like I was saying, the Porsche kind of isn't as good as the Lexus. The Lexus can hold a lot of speed and save a lot of fuel. We've seen a lot of drivers doing really well in that Lexus when it was obviously the official season, when it was more about fuel consumption than anything else. But this race wasn't too bad. They've kind of got it right in a way with this race. The fuel consumption was it wasn't a massive advantage, it was just a slight advantage to the drivers in the better cars for fuel consumption. As we see going into this long left-hand corner, this was a corner I was really struggling with. I tended to lose a bit of time there, but I just felt it was best just to play it safe. Don't risk driving that corner too aggressive, because that's where I was going to make a mistake if I was probably going to make one, because when I was doing the time trial session, that corner I was really struggling on. But you can see managing to stay within a second, around about a second behind PRT Snake, and that's what I've got to try and do, is keep myself within about a second to 1.2 seconds behind them. And to be fair, I was just happy to be in P2 at this stage. This would be a reasonably good finish for myself, considering that I just didn't really learn the track. But at the moment, you can see trying to keep the short shifting going. You can see I'm not really revving out the gears. I'm trying to make sure that the thing with the Porsche is, if you rev it past where you hit the end of the limiter, like close to the red bar filling up, if you let it rev for that extra few seconds there, that's when the Porsche really does use up a lot of its fuel. So I was tending to shift just on the end there, or a little bit, maybe 3/4 of the way on the bar, just to make sure I've got a little bit of fuel when we come to pit stop, that I don't have to put too much in, because I knew that the Lexus was behind me, so I was pretty sure that Lexus was going to be able to save more fuel than myself. But obviously it would just come down to, can we get ourselves a gap to P3 when we go in the pits, and can we stay with PRT Snake in front of me? At the moment, we're actually doing quite a good job of staying with him. I actually gained a bit on him there from when we were 1 second behind. We're now 8 tenths behind, and this is good benefit for myself, because while I'm behind him, I can get the benefit of a little bit of slipstream on this track, where this is really a slipstream track. So if you do get in the slipstream, you can short shift a bit, and this is really going to help me out. As you can see, not revving out, short shifting again into 5th gear there, just trying to make sure that I'm not wasting too much fuel. And obviously the Lexus probably doing the same thing as I'm doing behind me. And Snake there obviously driving I don't know whether he was saving fuel or not at this stage of the race. So for me, I just had to keep with the strategy that I was on, which was just looking after the tyres and just trying to keep it smooth, not making an error, because this track, if you make an error, you're going to lose a lot of time, because it's so fast paced. If you make a little error on one of the fast corners, and you're going to lose 2 to 3 seconds at least. So it's really important to keep it consistent. As you can see it going through the really tricky corner, that's one of the trickier corners on track, staying with around that 1 second gap to PRT Snake. Now I think he might have been accelerating, using a little bit more fuel on some of the straights, but then some areas he might have been saving the fuel. I'm not too sure. We're going to have a little look and compare it at the end of the race, the different levels of fuel midway, just to see. But you can see behind me the Lexus getting fairly close, but at the moment I'm just trying to look after both situations. I want to make sure that I stay reasonably close to PRT Snake. I don't want to be like right up pressuring him and we lose time, because then I'm going to give P3 the chance to get a little bit closer. But then I've got to make sure I don't let P3 get so close to myself that he's gonna then go for the move on myself as well. So it's just about managing these positions, saving fuel, giving myself the ability to save some fuel, so when we pit, that P3 doesn't manage to jump myself, and that I still manage to stay fairly close to P1. So at the moment it's looking fairly equal between P1, 2 and 3 in this race. It looks like Jay Adams has had some kind of issue. I don't know where he went, but it looks like he's outside of the top 8 position. So whether there was a spin or an incident from another driver, I'm not too sure there. He was down in 4th position, I think it was 4th or 5th position, so maybe something happened there that I didn't really see. But you can see they're trying to stay with PRT Snake through the really fast long corners, and just at the moment it's staying around that 1.1 second, 1.2 second gap, going through there with a purple sector. Obviously lap 2 still the really long lap on this track. It's so you kind of get confused about the laps, because it's over a 3-minute lap. You feel like you're further into the race than you actually are, but obviously we're only 2 laps in. This was a 6-lap race. I was going to just split this strategy right down the middle for this one, because the lap was too long, I felt, to risk doing any sort of overcut or undercut. So for me it was just best just to hit on lap obviously 3, change the tyres and do another run on the harder compound tyre. And at the moment you can see the gap managing to pull away a bit now from P3. We're kind of building up enough of a cushion there to break that slipstream, which is good, because obviously that then means he's going to have to drive a little bit harder to try and get back in the slipstream for the pit stop. As you see there, getting very close to the barrier, inches away from hitting the barrier on the right hand side as they go through that corner, and getting fairly close to PRT Snake now. You can see getting in that slipstream, and this is again benefiting myself. Every time I get back into the slipstream, it means I can just save a bit more fuel and just short shift behind them. There's no point me really overdriving the car and putting him under pressure and we both lose time. Like I said before, it's better to keep both our speeds good and let myself benefit from the slipstream that gives me the ability to save more fuel. Going through that corner there, you can see not really pushing too hard, just keeping it nice and smooth. The car's just looking really under control, and I was actually quite surprised the way this race was going at this stage, because going into this race I really wasn't expecting much. I was really worried that I could end up making quite a few mistakes, spinning a lot, but I think going into the race just with the the mentality of just keeping it smooth, driving 90%, 85, 90%, and just trying not to make mistakes is probably helping me out at this stage, because I'm not overdriving the car, I'm saving fuel, everything is going reasonably well so far. I can't really be going any better. I mean, it could be in P1, but at this point I think it's probably better to be in P2 right behind P1, and you know gaining the ability to short shift a little bit more on them straights. And you can see P3 behind starting to drop back a bit. There's a bit of a gap then to P5 and P4 and 5. So at the moment it looks like a solid podium is on the table, and it's all going to be about the pit stop. What strategies will people go on? I was thinking that someone might try and do the overcut by putting then on the softer compound tyre on in the pit stop, but I felt like that wasn't a good option, because I think on lap 4, if you try and keep these tyres for that extra lap, I think they're going to lose quite a bit over the harder compound tyre. As you can see there, still within the slipstream of PRT Snake. So this race has been really close, actually quite intense at this stage. I do enjoy races like this when it's really close. You can see as P3 looks like he's dropped back down to 2.3 seconds behind, so losing a bit more pace on this lap, where the tyres I think are starting to affect that Lexus compared to the Porsche. The Porsche fairly good on its tyres, so starting to get a little bit of an advantage over him at this stage, and this just means I can save some more fuel. You can see dropping back to 1.2 seconds, just trying to short shift it now as we go to the pit stop phase. And I really didn't know what was going to happen at this phase. Was PRT Snake going to stay out, or was he going to pit for tyres? I expected he would pit, as I kind of expected everyone would pit on lap 3, because it kind of was the only real strategy that made sense to myself. I mean, for me, there was probably a possibility of going onto the medium tyres if you were going to stay out for that extra lap. I felt like the time that you'd lose on the 4th lap, and then the time that you're going to lose on that final lap, when that's, and the risk as well of the medium tyres, I think on the final lap on lap 2 was going to be quite high, because even one lap of qualifying they were starting to get very loose at the end of the lap. So I felt it was too risky to do that. For me, it was best just to do the lap 3 split and just see how it goes. As you can see, P1 going through the final corner. Is he going to pit, or is he going to stay out? Let's have a little look now, as I'm going to go to the pits, and he's actually going to stay out. This was really strange. I don't know what strategy he was on, but we're going to go in the pits. Maybe he wanted to see what the fuel situation was like, as I go in with reasonable fuel. You can see a little bit more, a little bit less than obviously the Lexus behind me, but I expected that, so I just put a little bit of extra fuel in just to cover myself off. And the Lexus gained a bit of time in the pit stop, but not a massive amount, so I actually did a reasonably good job with the fuel through that section on that, obviously the first 3 laps, because the Lexus is one of the stronger cars when it comes to fuel consumption. So I kind of was worried that the Lexus might be able to jump me in the pits, because I didn't think he'd need to pit for fuel. I thought he would just be able to just put tyres on. Well, I think he could have done. Maybe he was over revving the car a little bit on some of the straights just to try and keep pace. I don't really know. But PRT Snake now 11.5 seconds in the lead, so it's just about trying to push and get that gap down a bit now to on around 10 seconds to see if we can jump him in the pit. So not trying to drive too aggressive on this lap, just trying to keep it fairly smooth, because I don't want to make a massive mistake. It's going to be interesting to see what strategy he is actually on. Obviously there was no way of really doing a no stop in this race, because the tyres were just getting too worn, and obviously the fuel consumption as well on the Porsche was a massive issue. I mean, you probably could have done a no stop in this race, but I think the pace that he was showing in the early stint kind of was too fast for a no stopper anyway, and the tyres would be totally gone towards the end, so not really an option to do that strategy. As you can see there, not gained too much on him on this lap so far, just about half a second. It's down to 11.1 seconds, but now I realised I was going to have to start putting some, reasonable sectors in if I was going to try and get the jump on him in the pit. So pushing a lot harder through there. You can see really using all the track and getting on the power, and it's getting close to around 10 seconds now, that gap. 10.9 seconds. So if we can get it down under, it's got to be around 10 seconds. That was what I was working on. If I can get it around 10 seconds, might be able to come out the pits ahead of him. But what we don't know, if he is pitting, maybe, who knows what fuel he had left. It really did. Wasn't 100% sure if he had saved more fuel than me, or if he had not used as, if he'd been using a little bit more revs and I'd actually used more fuel than myself during the first 3 laps. So it's quite tactical at this moment, not knowing where I was going to come out, where was I going to get the lead, but then he was going to have the fresher tyres. It was really quite interesting to see what would happen as I go down the straight. You can see coming through to the final section in this race now. Just a couple of corners to go, about 3 or 4 corners to go as we push really hard there, trying to drive the best we can to just try and make sure we get as close to possible as jumping him in the pits. You can see managed to gain quite a big chunk of time actually through them corners, over half a second. So obviously his tyres on this lap that he was on obviously starting to suffer a bit with that wear, and something that I knew would probably happen, because the 4th lap I did try, I think at 4, to do a no stop race, but the tyres were just totally dead when I tested it out. That's because before I did this race, I exited the time trial obviously with just a 202.5, and the first thing I wanted to test was the tyres going to be possible to do that no stopper, and it just didn't look possible. As we can see, into the pits there goes PRT Snake. So now it was really interesting to see, had he saved enough fuel in that first 4 laps to be able to come out in front in the lead. Have a little look now, and he hasn't, and I kind of expected that when he went in the pits. I saw that he only had quite a low percentage of fuel left, so he was obviously being more aggressive in that first stint than I was. And then obviously the undercut for myself, obviously pitting on lap 3, has kind of worked out and put myself in the lead with more over a second in the lead, which is good for myself, because he's actually battling now with P3, who had a little look on the outside that corner, but that really wasn't going to work. So now I've just got to try and keep it smooth and keep the car on the track, because I didn't really know what tyres he was going to be on. I wasn't sure if he was going to just go on another set of hard tyres and really drive aggressive and obviously be able to push them, or was he going to drive the medium tyres and drive quite safely, but with the advantage of them being the much faster tyre. This is going to be fairly interesting as we see riding on board now with 1.6 seconds clear. So this is really good, because he's not going to get the benefit of the slipstream over myself. So now I've just got to try and keep it fairly calm all the way to the end and try and hold on to this lead. Obviously he's going to have the benefit of that fresher set of tyres. So lap 3 he's going to be quite a bit faster than myself, so it's going to be really close. This is quite interesting, to be fair, and I didn't expect to be in the lead going over the finish when we come out. When he came out the pits, I expected him to be ahead of myself, but like I say, maybe he was overdriving the car a little bit on the first stint, pushing a little bit harder on the fuel consumption because he didn't have a slipstream to work with. So it's actually kind of paid off for myself now, and we're 1.6 seconds clear, and just trying to keep it nice and smooth now for the final lap as we go through on the purple sector. Obviously we've got the fresher tyres on, this is the second lap on these tyres. Obviously the out lap doesn't count, so he's probably going to put in a very fast lap on that final lap. As you can see, driving reasonably aggressive, but not trying to take too many risks. I'm just trying to keep him out the slipstream for as long as possible. I needed to try and really get over this final lap a second clear, because he's going to have much better tyres. Obviously lap 3 is when the tyres start dropping off by over a second, so it was going to be really close and quite tense, to be fair. As you can see, he's getting closer and closer. He's now 1.4 seconds behind, and he's getting to that distance where he's going to be picking up that slipstream very soon. So this is getting really intense. You can see P3 has actually dropped off quite a bit now, as obviously I put a little bit of fuel in when I pitted to try and make sure that I could drive a little bit more aggressive on this final stint, just so I could push a little bit harder on the revs, because I kind of thought that I might have to when it comes to defending, if either the Lexus was going to get close to me, or if I had to drive really aggressive with the Porsche of PRT Snake. As you can see there, running really wide. Then he's actually got that gap under a second to myself, so it's 8 tenths of a second now as we're coming to the end of this lap. So this final lap is going to be very intense. It's going to be very close. Will I be able to hold on to this lead all the way to the finish? I've just got to try and keep it smooth and put defensive lines when I need to, make sure that he can't make a move, and just try and hold on. As you can see, trying to go to the left hand side of the track to break that slipstream, then back over to the right hand side for the normal racing line, just trying to disrupt that slipstream that he's going to get, and it kind of worked. You can see he's only gained a very short amount of time there, and going into the turn 1, pushing reasonably hard. You can see the rear going there as I'm trying to get fairly aggressive on the throttle, because I want to make sure I'm getting good exit speeds from these corners and still maintaining that 7/10 of a second, nearly 8/10 of a second to himself. Now fuel was going to be a little bit of an issue, I thought, possibly because it's saying 1 lap of fuel, but obviously because the lap's so long and I've been doing quite a lot of short shifting, I needed to pay attention to that. But at this point of the lap, I really wasn't paying attention. I was just trying to drive reasonably aggressive because I didn't want him getting too close to me. And now this is a section where his fresher tyres are really going to pay him back, really, because obviously the extra braking distance and then the grip on acceleration, you can see how much he's caught up through there. I'm trying to take quite a wide line through that corner, and you can see trying to get on the power, coming so close to the barrier. This is going to be really close now as we go into the braking for the right hander up ahead. You can see he's having a little look. Is he going to try and make that move? He's going to pull out of the slipstream. He's having a little look at the inside, but he can't go for that move, and fairly doesn't go for it there. He's too far back to throw it on that corner. It's a dangerous corner to really make a move on anyway. So again, he's just going to try and sit in that slipstream and possibly look for another opportunity when he gets a slipstream from one of the straights. So you can see getting a better line than myself through there because he's obviously got the fresher tyres, and I'm just trying to hold on now to this race and try and keep the car on the track all the way to the finishing line. You see trying to push it really hard through there, and he's actually pushed it too hard. He scrapes the wall, and he's actually, I don't know, he's possibly picked up damage there, I'm not too sure, but that gives me now the ability to build that lead back over a second. So now all I've really got to do is take it really easy all the way to the finishing line. Just make sure I don't make any mistakes. So going through this left-hand corner, braking super early there, just making sure I don't push it at all. You can see losing a few tenths to him, but really there was no worry. There was no point me risking pushing it too far because I've got a 1.1, 1.2 second lead, so I can afford to lose a couple of tenths on every corner. And that's kind of the mentality I wanted to go with, because obviously he's got them fresher tyres, I've got the more worn tyres. So for me, it's better to take it easy and just try and keep the car on the track as we're coming through to the final corners now. Just about 5 corners to go before the end of this lap, and possible victory, another victory in the FIA Manufacturer Series. Pushing reasonably hard through there, but again not really taking it to the edge of the track. You see he's got that gap down to 7/10, 8/10 of a second, and he is gaining obviously with them fresher tyres. He's getting closer. You can see I'm using fuel mixture 2 because I realised the fuel was very low, 0.2 laps of fuel, 4% to go to the end, so I had to be fairly cautious with the fuel, just trying to make sure that he doesn't get too close to me. You can see getting fairly aggressive on the throttle there. Back into one mixture now, and felt that I might be able to get to the end with just using 2-3, but you can see having to go to 2 mixture there and just trying to play. I was just constantly looking at the gap, working out what fuel mixture I could use. I could see he wasn't close enough. He's driving really aggressive through that corner, but now I can go to 1 mixture for the final straight, and he's got close, but he's not got close enough, and I've actually managed to take the win in this race. So that mistake was really costly for PRT Snake. I think he had a penalty to get rid of. Yeah, he had quite a big penalty also, so ended up finishing the race over 2 seconds clear, and a nice solid result. I did not expect that in this race, so really happy to pick up the win in another FIA Manufacturers race. And so to be fair, this season has been going really well. I think there was a couple of races where I mistakes, and obviously the first race when we probably should have won as well. So this season I've had the potential to win pretty much every race I've been in, just the odd little mistake that's caught me out. But this race, picking up another win, and that's really great. Puts me quite high up on the FIA Manufacturers top 10. I think it was into P3 in the European Championship. So P2 I think for Porsche. I think Org was still just clear by a couple of 100 points. So maybe if we can pick up a good result in one of the final 3 races, we might be able to get a little bit of a jump on Org also. Anyway, we'll have a little look at the fuel situation as we came to the end of lap 3 in that race. First up, we're going to see what points we managed to get. I think it was over 2,200 points for the win. It was nearly, I think it might have been over 2,300 points actually. Let's have a little look. I think it was I can't remember what time race we did on this one. It was possibly the 8 p.m. race I think I did, or the 9 p.m. I think it was actually the 8 p.m. race I did for this one. Yeah, 2,381 points, so quite an okay amount of points. Obviously, it could have been more, but obviously these lobbies are not as competitive as the official season, so not a bad amount of points to come away with for round 5, and another solid round, obviously P1. So let's have a little look at the pit stops phase when we went in for tyres and see the fuel. You can see just under half a tank for myself, but when we go to PRT Snake, you can see he actually had quite a little bit less fuel than me. So I think that's where the jump came about, because obviously we gained over a second on that lap 4, and then he obviously lost about a second in the pits from the fuel. So we came out about 1.5 seconds clear from being 1 second behind, nearly 1.5 seconds behind. So we gained nearly 3 seconds just by that situation. I think he might have made a mistake going for that strategy. I think if he would have pitted on lap 3, possibly we might have still jumped him, but then we would have had equal. It's a hard one, because then we would have had obviously equal tyres, and I had been saving fuel in that first stint, he hadn't. So what would the pace have been when we were both equal? I really don't know. It would have been very close, but it was a really fun race and a great little battle. Luckily for myself, I come out with the win. Anyway, thanks again for watching this video. Make sure you leave a comment if you enjoyed it. Make sure you give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it also. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please make sure you subscribe and click that notification button so you don't miss any future videos. I do try and upload videos as much as possible and also stream as much as possible. Anyway, thanks again for watching. I'll be back very soon.